Good morning, Rudraksh. Good morning, Sakshi. Good morning, Rushi. Good morning, Vedant. Good morning. Today we are going to learn a new lesson which is called the enemy. Okay. So if you've got your textbook with you, you can open the textbook. Okay, or else you can see along with me. In case of any word meaning and all, if you want to write something on the book with pencil, then you can keep your book and pencil ready. Okay, the name of the lesson today that I am going to start is the enemy. Okay, so you can keep your textbook in front of you while I explain you the lesson. So at the moment 4 students are present, so let me begin without wasting any further time. Let me begin. So Rudraksh, am I audible to you? Please confirm me with the text whether I am audible to you. Am I audible to you, dear students? Please confirm me with the text. Okay, thank you, Rudraksh. Okay, so let me first highlight on the theme of the story, the enemy. Okay, so you see along with me, the story unfolds a moral dilemma of a Japanese doctor emotionally torn between his twin duty, both as a professional doctor and a real Japanese human being trained abroad. Okay, so this story is about a Japanese doctor who was very loyal to his profession, but he was facing a conflict in his mind. Okay, what was the conflict that he was suffering from? The conflict was whether he should remain committed to his profession or he should keep in mind his duty as a citizen of Japan. Because if he has to give priority to the fact that he is a Japanese citizen loyal to the government, in that case he cannot be true to his profession, and vice versa. Means if he remains committed to his profession, then he cannot be committed to his country as a loyal citizen. Therefore, in this story we find the conflict arising in the mind of a Japanese doctor. Okay, and this conflict comes when they come across, he and his wife Hana. His name is Sadao. The name of the Japanese doctor that we are going to learn today is Sadao. Okay, and his wife Hana. So what happens? One day Dr. Sadao and his wife Hana came across an injured soldier he was an American prisoner of war. Okay, he was lying unconscious on the seashore. Understood? Therefore, as he was an American prisoner of war, and America was the enemy country for Japan, therefore he was initially hesitant to give medical help to the enemy soldier, because the soldier which was found lying unconscious on the seashore was an American. Understood? Therefore, Sadao was in a conflict whether to be committed to his profession and give medical help to the unconscious prisoner of war, American prisoner of war, or he should be committed to his country as a responsible citizen. Understood? Therefore, this conflict arises in his mind. So this is what is the meaning of the first sentence that I have read out to you. Let me read out once again to you. The story unfolds a moral dilemma of a Japanese doctor emotionally torn between his twin duty, both as professional doctor and a real Japanese human being trained abroad. Dr. Sadao was trained as a medical professional, okay, in USA, okay, in USA, abroad, not in Japan. But now that his study is over, he is back to Japan. And remember, this story has taken place in the backdrop of World War. Okay, so this we have to keep in mind. Okay, so let me continue. In the end, his humanism coupled with professional morality wins over his nationalistic compulsions. What happens towards the end of the story? We find that his humanism, his values, okay, as a human being, his charitable attitude, his human values, his humanism, okay, coupled with his professional morality, professional responsibility, wins over his nationalistic compulsions. So what was his nationalistic compulsions? He was not supposed to attend to an enemy soldier. That was his nationalistic compulsion. Okay, because US is considered to be the enemy of Japan. Therefore, he was not supposed to attend the American prisoner of war. But towards the end of the story, his commitment towards his profession won over his nationalistic compulsion of not attending the American soldier. Therefore, he eventually listened to his inner conscience, voice of conscience, like you have found in the chapter Indigo. Okay, Mahatma Gandhi listened to his voice of conscience. Okay, Mahatma Gandhi was also in a conflict of duties, whether to listen to the British official to quit Champaran or to stay back at Champaran and carry on with his agitation against the British planters. Okay, likewise in this lesson also we find a Japanese doctor by the name of Dr. Sadao was also in a conflict, whether to render his medical help to the American prisoner of war or to keep or to be committed to his profession. So if he has to commit to his profession, he has no alternative but to attend to the American prisoner of war. So eventually he has listened to his own conscience, and he has, as he is a very committed doctor, he has attended the patient, he has rendered his medical help to the patient, and this is how he has stayed committed to his profession and given priority to his profession over his nationalistic compulsions, because he is full of human values. He is driven by the urge of helping others. Therefore, he had to remain committed to his profession and helped his patient. Okay, he finds a way in between and proves his sterling qualities. okay, both as a doctor and as a true Japanese. Okay, so what he did eventually, what he did, dear students, what he did eventually he has listened to his voice of conscience and attended the American soldier. Okay, and a true human being, and he has also proved through his commitment in the with the profession that he is a true human being. He is a true human being. The real human side of Sadao against the American prejudice makes him a symbol of what a real doctor should be, irrespective of racism and narrow-minded prejudice. Okay, so the real human side of Sadao, because he was a very committed doctor, so the real side of Sadao against the American prejudice makes him a symbol of what a real doctor should be. Okay, so his humanitarian consideration took precedence. Okay, his humanitarian consideration helped him to stay committed to his profession, and this particular approach of his commitment to his profession, okay, has made him a symbol of what a real doctor should be. Unlike today's doctors, okay, who are very much professional and who are very much commercial by nature, okay, money minded by nature. So a real doctor is never too much money minded. Okay, he should not be commercial in his approach towards the patient. So Sadao's humanitarian consideration for treating the enemy soldier, okay, made him a symbol of what a real doctor should be, irrespective of racism. Racism means the racial difference between the Americans and the Japanese. Okay, this is what is racism all about, and narrow-minded prejudice. Okay, it is narrow-minded prejudice because we should consider all human beings as one. All should be treated one. But what happens? You might have heard the examples of so many Indians being harassed in the workplace in Australia, America. So it happens. This is called racism. So racism comes out of jealousy. Okay, racism comes out of the fact that you do not belong to our country, you are a foreigner. So such racism, such examples of racism comes out of narrow-minded prejudice. Okay, the difference that we create among human beings because of nationality or because of our jealousy, because of our narrow-mindedness. Okay, so you might have understood by this time what the story is going to be all about. Okay, so the main character or the protagonist of the story of today's story is Dr. Sadao, who is a Japanese doctor. Okay, who has been trained as a medical professional in the US. Okay, but he is now back to his native place, that is in Japan. So Anish, good morning. Good morning. I have already explained to you the theme of the story. Now let me straightway start with the text. Okay, so now you see, I'm just reading out. It is the time of the World War. An American prisoner. It is a time of the World War, and an American prisoner of war is washed ashore in a dying state and is found at the doorstep of a Japanese doctor. Should he save him as a doctor or hand him over to the army as a patriot? That was the conflict. That was the conflict from which Dr. Sadao suffered. What was the conflict all about? The conflict was whether he should save the American prisoner of war who was found lying unconscious on a seashore. Okay, so whether as a doctor he is required to save the patient's life, or as a loyal citizen of Japan he should not treat the American prisoner of war and hand him over to the army as a patriot. Okay, if he has to show his commitment towards his country, then he has to compromise his medical profession. Understood? He has to compromise his commitment towards his profession. But if he has to stay committed to his profession, then he has to compromise with his so-called patriotic feeling. Okay, so let's find out what he does. Eventually, you might have come to know from my discussion of the theme. So, of course, Sadao has given priority of his profession, okay, and priority to his profession, and has rendered his medical assistance to the unconscious American prisoner of war who was found lying unconscious on a seashore. Okay, now let's find out. In this paragraph, the beginning, we find some background information about where Dr. Sadao was brought up in Japan, and and his childhood information, his father's information about his father, and so on. So we shall go a bit fast this part, okay, because this part is not so important in the development of the plot. Okay. So, Dr. Sadao Hoki's house was built on a spot of the Japanese coast where as a little boy he had often played. Okay, so Dr. Sadao's house was on a Japanese coastal area. Okay, his house was situated on a coastal area. The low square stone was set upon rocks well above a narrow beach that was outlined with band pines. So the nearby scenario of that leads to his house has been already mentioned here. Okay, with pine trees all around. As a boy, Sadao had climbed the pines, supporting himself on his bare feet, as he had seen man do in the South Seas when they climbed for coconuts. Okay, so this is the description of Sadao's childhood as a boy, as he was living in a coastal area. Therefore, as a boy, he had climbed up the pines, and also he has seen men do some activities in the South Seas. Okay, some sport on the seas when they climbed for coconuts. Okay, coconut trees. His father had taken him often to the islands of those seas, and never had he failed to say to the little brave boy at his side, "Those islands yonder means there, those islands there, they are the stepping stones to the future of Japan." Okay, because these all belong to the area of Japan. Therefore, his father has just pointed the nearby islands and told him that those islands there, as you can see, are the stepping stones to the future of Japan. Then where shall we step from them? Sadao had asked seriously. Who knows? Okay. Sadao, as a curious boy, was asking his father several questions regarding such islands. So his father says, there is no idea, who knows, but these islands are very important for the growth of Japan. Who can limit our future? It depends on what we make it. Okay, Sadao's father replied to Sadao, who can limit our future? Okay, it depends on what we make it. Okay, this is a motivational quote for all of us, dear students. Okay, future is very much broad, and nobody knows, okay, what we are going to, what kind of achievement, what kind of milestones we are going to achieve in our future. It all depends on our approach towards life, our approach towards our work, our commitment towards what we do in future. Okay, so it is us, it is you who are responsible for the future of your country. So this particular statement of Sadao's father can also be taken as an universal statement, okay, for every nation, okay, and every human being. Okay, now let's move on to the next paragraph. That is, Sadao had taken this into his mind as he did everything his father said. So Sadao was the only son of his father. Remember, Sadao was the only son of his father. Therefore, his father took utmost care of Sadao in ensuring that Sadao grows up to be a very responsible person. He learns whatever he is expected to learn. Therefore, his father was always after him, giving him necessary instructions, giving him necessary values which are required to grow as a responsible citizen. Sadao had taken this into his mind as he did everything his father said. He was a very obliging child from his childhood onwards. Okay, he used to always oblige the instructions given by his father. His father, who never joked or played with him, but who spent spent infinite pains upon him who was his only son. Okay, his father may not have been involved with Sadao in cracking jokes or playing with him much, but he spent infinite pains upon him, okay, in order to ensure that his son grows up in the most congenial environment, and he imbibes the values that a child is required to imbibe, okay, in his childhood. So Sadao knew that his education was his father's chief concern. Sadao's father, the chief concern of Sadao's father was the education, okay, was his son's education, okay, was his son's education. So Sadao's father knew that Sadao knew that his education was his father's chief concern. Therefore Sadao's father Sadao became very much focused on studies. For this reason he had been sent at 22, okay, as his father was very much concerned about his education. Therefore he had been sent when he was 22 years old to America to learn all that could be learned of surgery and medicine. Understood? So he has been sent when he turned 22. He had been sent to America to pursue medical science. He had come back at 30. Okay, he had come back at 30. He was sent at 22. He came back after 8 years to Japan after finishing his medical studies. And before his father died, he has seen Sadao become famous not only as a surgeon but as a scientist. So the dream of his father became fulfilled. Okay, before he died, Sadao became already famous not only as a surgeon but also as a scientist. So the dream and aspiration of his father regarding Sadao became fulfilled. Okay, Sadao was very much committed to his education, to his studies, to his profession later on, of course. And he was so hardworking and tenacious that he could fulfill the dream that his father saw for him. Okay, because he was perfecting a discovery which would render wounds entirely clean, he had not been sent abroad with the troops. Okay, so he was not involved in the as from his country's behalf abroad. Why? Because he was perfecting a discovery in Japan. He was perfecting a discovery which would render wounds entirely clean. So he was doing a diploma, or you can say he was doing a PG or sort of specialization course in medicine as to how to render wounds entirely clean at the time of World War in Japan. Therefore he was not sent with the troops abroad. Okay, he was allowed to stay back. Okay, otherwise doctors had to voluntarily or involuntarily, they had to compulsorily also go with the troops. Okay, in case the troops become injured, they have to attend to them. Okay, during the World War. So he was not sent. Also he knew there was some slight danger that the old general might need an operation for a condition for which he was now being treated medically, and for this possibility Sadao was being kept in Japan. Okay, so Sadao was not sent outside Japan, okay, abroad with the troops, primarily because of two reasons. First reason is he was perfecting a discovery that can render wounds entirely clean, and secondly, the old general, okay, who was the head of the state, you can say, the old general who was old general of Japan, okay, might need an operation for a condition he was now medically treated, for which Sadao's help is required. Okay, because Dr. Sadao was a surgeon. Okay, therefore, in order to attend to the old general, Sadao was also not sent abroad. Okay, so these are the primary two reasons for which Sadao was not sent abroad with the troops. Clouds were rising from the ocean now. The unexpected warmth of the past few days had a night drawn heavy fog from the cold weather. This part is not so important, dear students. I am going a bit fast. Sadao watched mist hide outlines of a little island near the shore, and then come creeping up the beach below the house, wreathing around the pines. In a few minutes, fog would be wrapped up wrapped about the house too, then he would go into the room where Hannah, his wife, would be waiting for him with the two children. Okay, now we can find in this particular paragraph we can find Dr. Sadao being married to Hannah with two children. Okay, but at this moment the door opened and she looked out. A dark blue woolen hawari is a garment actually over her kimono. She came to him affectionately and put her arm though he is through his, as he stood, smiled and said nothing. He had met Hannah. So how did he meet Hannah? Okay, he met Hannah in the US while he was pursuing his medical profession. He had met Hannah in America, but he had waited to fall in love with her until he was sure she was Japanese. Okay, so because his father was a bit orthodox in the sense that he wanted Sadao to get married to Japanese only. Okay, not with an American and all that. So when Dr. Sadao met Hannah, he was not sure to fall in love with her. He was not sure whether he can fall in love or not, because he wanted to make sure that the woman that he was likely to love should be Japanese. So when he understood, when he discovered the fact, then they got married and now he is blessed with two children. His father would never have received her unless she had been pure in her race. Okay, if she has not been pure Japanese, his father would not have accepted her, because that was the mindset of the people in those days. Okay, not so cosmopolitan in outlook. Okay, like parents of nowadays. Okay. Anyway, he wondered often whom he would have married if he had not met Hannah, and by what luck he had found her in the most casual way, by chance, literally at an American professor's house. The professor and his wife had been kind people, anxious to do something for their few foreign students, and the students, though bored, had accepted this kindness. Okay, so Sadao had met Hannah in the house of an American professor. Understood? In the house of an American professor. The professor and his wife had been kind people, anxious to do something for their foreign students here, Japanese students. Okay, and the students, though bored, had accepted this kindness. Okay, students also reciprocated the kindness of their professor and his wife, because they were very much caring professors who were interested to render all possible help to the foreign students like Sadao and Hannah. Sadao had often told Hannah how nearly he had not gone to Professor Hurley's house that night. The rooms were so small, the food so bad, the professor's wife so voluble. Voluble means, dear students, voluble refers to voluble means talkative. Okay, this American professor's wife was very talkative, but he had gone and there he had found Hannah, a new student, and had felt he would love her if it were at all possible. Okay, so this is how Dr. Sadao met Hannah at the residence of an American professor. Okay, and this is how they fell in love and then eventually got married with one another. Okay, now he felt that okay, this paragraph you read on your own, because this is about Sadao's interaction with his wife. Okay, and all. Now let's go to the perfect. Now let's straightway move on to the plot. It was at this moment when Hannah and when Dr. Sadao and Hannah were talking together, in their house. Probably from the balcony, they could see that something black came out of the mists. Okay, now it was a man. It was a man. He was flung out of the ocean. Flung, it seemed, to his feet by a breaker. Okay. So, dear students, breaker means a heavy sea wave that breaks into white foam. Okay, a heavy sea wave is called breaker. Okay, so while Dr. Sadao and his wife Hannah was sitting comfortably in their residence, probably from the balcony they could see a faint view of a man lying unconscious on the seashore. Okay, so it was a man. He was flung up out of the ocean. Flung means thrown. It seemed to his feet by a breaker. Okay, a wave might have brought him. He staggered a few steps. Walked unsteadily is called walk unsteadily is called stagger. He staggered a few steps, his body outlined against the mist. Because there was mist, so Sadao and his wife could not see clearly the body of the American prisoner of war. He staggered, his body outlined against the mist, his arms above his head, then he curled, then the curled mist hid him again. Again the mist came between Sadao and the American soldier, therefore he was not able to see him properly. So out of curiosity they have come out of the house now and they would like to see, and who is that person? Who is that? Hannah cried. She dropped Sadao's arm and they both leaned over the railing of the veranda. Okay, now they saw him again. The man was on his hands and knees crawling. Okay, then they saw him fall on his face and lie there. A fisherman perhaps, Sadao said, washed from his boat. Washed from his boat. So Sadao initially thought that it was a fisherman, okay, who was washed out from his boat. Okay, his boat might have capsized and he was washed from his boat. He ran quickly down the steps and behind him Hannah came, her white sleeves flying. A mile or two away on either side there were fishing villages. A mile or two away on either side there were fishing villages, but here was only the bare and lonely coast, dangerous with rocks. The surf beyond the beach was spiked with rocks. The surf also surf means a foam formed by the waves. Okay, surf means a foam, white foam, okay, formed by the waves. So the surf beyond the beach was spiked with the rocks. Okay, covered with rocks, you can say. Or spike means pierced through the rocks actually. Okay, means surf was constantly hitting the rocks. Okay, somehow the man managed to come through them. He must be badly torn. Okay, so till that point Dr. Sadao and his wife was not sure who that fellow was. They initially thought him to be a fisherman. Okay, but when they will watch him from close quarters, from close range, only then they will be able to understand or identify him. Okay, so okay, so dear students, are you able to see the text as well as hear me properly? Am I audible and my text is visible to you, dear students? Can anyone text me so that I can proceed? Okay, thank you Anish, thank you. Okay, so now they will proceed towards the unconscious man and they will come to know whether the person is a fisherman or someone else. They will discover. Okay, now let's find out. Okay, they saw when they came towards him, and that indeed it was so. The sand on one side of him had already a stain of red soaking through. He was bleeding profusely, dear students. He was bleeding profusely. Therefore, the sand on one side of him had already a stain of red, okay, red blood, okay, soaking through. He is wounded, Sadao exclaimed. He made haste. He made haste to the man who lay motionless, okay, his face in the sand. So as dear students, Dr. Sadao was a very sensitive teacher. Doctor. He was a very sensitive doctor, very much committed doctor, very much empathetic, okay, in nature. Therefore, he became very much carried away by his emotion to see the blood, flowing. Onto the sand, or to see the man bleeding profusely. He became a bit concerned. He became extremely concerned, okay, about the man because he was bleeding profusely. He is wounded, he said. He made haste to the man. He made haste means he rushed to the man who lay motionless, his face in the sand, an old cap stuck to his head, soaked with seawater. He was in wet rags of garments. Sadao stopped, Hannah at his side, and turned the man's head. They saw the face. A white man, Hannah whispered. Yes, it was a white man. The wet cape fell away and there was his wet yellow hair, long as though for many weeks it had not been cut, and upon his young and tortured face was a rough yellow beard. He was unconscious and knew nothing that they did for him. Okay, so till that point, what Dr. Sadao and his wife discovered was he was a white man. Okay, so white man here, they could understand that it was not a he was not a Japanese. Okay, he was a white man. Okay, but even though he was a white man, and as Dr. Sadao was a very committed medical professional, therefore he did not hesitate to sort of render him first aid. Understood? Therefore he gave his first aid to the American prisoner of war, even though they discovered that he was a white man. Now Sadao remembered the wound, and with his expert fingers he began to search for it. Okay, he was trying to discover the wound. Okay, he was trying to discover from where the blood was coming out. Blood flowed freshly at his touch. Okay, when Sadao touched at the wound, the blood continued flowing. On the right side of his lower back, Sadao saw that a gun wound had been reopened. A gun wound. So Dr. Sadao had discovered that the wound was because of a bullet. Okay, a gun was fired at the soldier. Okay, and he was wounded. The flesh was blackened with powder. Sometime not many days ago, the man had been shot and had not been tended. Tended means he had not been attended. He had not been given medical assistance. It was a bad chance that the rock had struck the wound. Okay, and also it was very much unfortunate that the rock had also caused some injury to his body. Understood? Oh, how he is bleeding, Hannah whispered. Okay, Hannah also became extremely concerned. She said, look how he is bleeding. How he is bleeding. So Hannah said, look how he is bleeding. Hannah whispered again in a solemn voice, means sincere voice. The mist screened them now completely, and at this time of day no one came by. Nobody came by at this time of the day. There was nobody around, no fishermen around. The fishermen had gone home, and even the chance beachcombers would have considered the day at an end. Even the beachcombers also were not around. Okay, at this particular time of the day. Beachcombers, dear students, means a person who walks along a beach looking for valuable or interesting items. Okay, he is called a beachcombers. Beachcombers means a person who walks along a beach looking for valuable or interesting items. Okay. Now, what shall we do? Now the real conflict will start, dear students. Now the real conflict will start, because they have already discovered that the unconscious man, okay, he is a prisoner of war, and secondly, he is an American or a white man. Now that is the reason exactly why now the conflict will start. What shall we do with this man? See, what shall we do with this man? Sadao muttered, but his trained hands seemed of their own will to be doing what they could do to staunch the fearful bleeding. Staunch means here to restrict the flow of blood. Okay, staunch means to restrict the flow of blood. What shall we do with this man? And then he said, my immediate task is to restrict the flow of blood from the body of this American man. That was his first priority, because unless the blood flow is immediately stopped, okay, there will be a heavy loss, blood loss. Okay, therefore it was their first priority to restrict the flow of the blood or to stop the blood flow. Okay, then what did he do to restrict the blood flow from the body of the American soldier is something what we are going to learn now. Okay, so he packed the wound with the sea moss that strewed the beach, that were lying spread up onto the beach. So with the help of sea moss, he was trying to prevent the blood flow. The man moaned with pain. The man was moaning with pain in his stupor. Stupor means unconscious state of the body is called stupor. Okay, unconscious state. Okay, it's called stupor. So the man was moaning in his unconscious state, but he did not awaken, but he did not wake up. Okay, the best thing that we could do would be to put him back in the sea, Sadao said, answering himself. So initially what happened, Sadao was a bit scared to render any medical assistance to the American prisoner of war, because it was a strict warning by the government. Okay, why? Because he was an American, so American is the enemy of the Japanese. Therefore, the initial thought that came to his mind was to throw him back to the sea. Otherwise, his own life might be also in danger of harboring an American soldier. Okay, therefore, the initial thought was to throw him into the sea, put him back into the sea after giving initial first aid. Now that the bleeding was stopped for the moment, and he stood up and dusted the sand from his hands. Yes, undoubtedly that would be best, Hannah said steadily. Hannah immediately said, yes, that would be best to send him back to or put him back into the sea. But she continued to stare down at the motionless man. That was their impulsive statement actually initially, because that was the initial reaction, dear students. Okay, both the husband and wife, both Dr. Sadao and his wife Hannah, instantly decided to put him back into the sea. But will they eventually stick to their impulsive statement is something what we have to look at now, okay, or we have to consider now. What was the statement afterwards? If we sheltered, they are saying, let me see, Sadao said, if we sheltered a white man in our house, we should be arrested. If we sheltered a white man in our house, we should be arrested. And if we turned him over as a prisoner, he would certainly die, Sadao said. So this is the conflict now. What is the conflict now? If they sheltered this white man, then they would certainly be arrested by the government. Okay? And if we turned him over as a prisoner, he would certainly die. Then what should we do here? Okay? Shall we allow the wounded person to die in the sea? Or shall we harbor this man or shelter this man to our house, nurse him back to the recovery stage? Shall we nurse the American prisoner of war back to the recovery stage, or shall we let him die in the sea? This is the question now. This is the question which is troubling them. This is the conflict that they are suffering from now. The kindest thing would be to put him back into the sea, Hannah said. So again, it's impulsive statement on the part of Hannah. Anybody would have done the same thing what Hannah and Sadao is thinking. Okay, but neither of them moved. They might have said this impulsively, but neither of them moved. They were staring with a curious repulsion upon the inert finger. They were staring with a curious repulsion. Why repulsion? Because they are not supposed to render medical assistance to a white American prisoner of war. Therefore, there was some repulsion, okay, to extend their medical help. Let's find out. What is he? Hannah whispered. There is something about him that looks American. Till the time they just knew that he was a white fellow, okay, he was a white injured soldier. But they were not yet able to establish the identity, the nationality of the injured soldier. So now they will come to the conclusion, okay, and their hypothesis or their assumption will be confirmed by the American soldier himself. See what he says. There is something about him that looks American, Sadao said. He took off the battered cap. Yes, there, almost gone, was the faint lettering, a sailor. The sailor might have come to some senses by this time, so he confirmed his nationality by saying that, yes, faint lettering, because he was not able to come to, he was not yet full conscious. Therefore, whatever came to his mouth was a sailor, okay. Faintly he said, I am a sailor from an American warship. He spelled it out, US Navy. I belong to US Navy. The man was a prisoner of war. Okay. Now both Sadao and his wife became confirmed that this white man who is lying unconscious on the seashore was an American soldier, a prisoner of war, an American sailor. Okay, he was an American sailor, okay, who belonged to US Navy and who was a prisoner of war. Prisoner of war, dear students, refers to the fact that when enemy country is captured or enemy soldier is captured, they are called prisoner of war. Okay, when the enemy soldier is defeated or an enemy soldier is captured, okay, he is called prisoner of war. So the country who has captured the enemy soldier will be called and will be making the captured soldier the prisoner of war. Okay, so here the prisoner of war is the sailor, okay, who was lying unconscious. He has escaped, Hana cried softly, and that is why he is wounded. Okay, he was trying to escape, therefore he became wounded in the back. Sadao agreed. They hesitated, looking at each other. Okay, both of them hesitated, okay, to render their medical help any further, because his identity and nationality has already been established. Then Hana said with resolution, with lot of commitment, with lot of determination, resolution, Hana said, "Come, are we able to put him back into the sea?" "If I am able, are you?" Sadao asked. Okay, if I am able to put him back into the sea, do you give me your consent? Okay, do you give me your consent to put him back into the sea? Let's see how Hana responds. "No," Hana said, "but if you can do it alone." Okay, if you can do it alone, it will be your own decision, it will be your exclusive decision. I cannot put him back into the sea. You decide what to do. Okay, Sadao hesitated again. The strange thing is, he said that if the man were whole, I could turn him over to the police without difficulty. The problem is, he is telling his wife, Sada, the problem is, if the man was very much whole means if the man was in a recovered state, I could have sent him, I could have handed him back to the police authority. But he is not a whole person, he is injured, he is lying unconscious, he is not able to move properly. Therefore, I cannot send him back to the authorities. I cannot hand him over to the authorities. Therefore, first I have to render some humanitarian assistance, medical assistance to the American prisoner of war and bring him back to the recovery stage, and then we can hand him over. Understood? I care nothing for him. He is my enemy. All Americans are my enemy. See, Sadao is saying. And he is only a common fellow. You see how foolish his face is. But since he is wounded, therefore, as Dr. Sada was very much committed in his profession, he cannot either send him or throw him into the sea, or he cannot hand him over to the Japanese authorities. You also cannot throw him back to the sea. Hana said, then there is only one thing to do. We must carry him into the house. But the servants, Sadao inquired, But the servants, how will they react? If we shelter an American soldier or American prisoner of war in our house, how will the servants react? They will react vehemently, they will react very strongly. Therefore, it is risky to take him back to our house, but there is no alternative left with Dr. Sadao and Hannah, okay, there is no alternative except taking the American prisoner of war back to his home. This will be the ultimate decision, okay, of both husband and wife, both Dr. Sadao and his wife, to take him to his residence, so that he can nurse him back to the recovery stage, and then they can hand over the American prisoner of war to the Japanese authorities. Okay, so ultimately what they will decide, dear students, they will decide to shelter this American prisoner of war to their respective houses. Okay, to their house, and attend him and bring him back to the recovery stage. Okay, so dear students, that's all about today, because I've got another class scheduled at 11:50. I'm running late. Anyway, so let's wind up here, dear students. Kanchan, good morning. Okay, so very few students though, those of you who are present, thank you so much for staying connected and attending the class, and we shall continue, dear students, the next day, because I've got to attend another class. Okay, so have a nice day, dear students. Have a nice day. We shall continue in the next class. Okay, so let me sign off here for the day. Till we meet the next class, take care and have a nice day. Bye bye.